Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today, Logan, we got to enjoy the two best words in sports, Game 7, twice. We are going to talk about both of those games today, but we're going to start with the more remarkable of the two, clearly. That being the Minnesota Timberwolves erasing a 20-point deficit in what has to be one of the most fascinating and back-and-forth series of our lifetimes. Of course, they raced out to the dominant 2-0 lead. Then it was 3-2 Nuggets. Then they deliver the near 50-point blowout in Game 6. It all comes down to this, and they erase the biggest halftime deficit in Game 7 history to then win. Absolutely incredible stuff from them. What do you have to say about this performance from the Timberwolves, Logan?
It's the tale of two halves, man. And this is one of the most resilient teams in basketball. You can never kill Minnesota. Denver, like you mentioned, was up 58-38, and it just felt like they got really comfortable and really complacent, man. Minnesota buttoned everything up in the second half and was so much better defensively and on the glass. Like, I want to give a shout out to all of their bigs, everybody on this roster, man. Rudy Gobert. I literally texted you, man, after the first half. I was on the Charles ship, man. I said they needed to bench Gobert. I was like, let's switch things up. Gobert stepped up in the second half, man. Like, you can be critical about his offensive game, man. I think Rudy Gobert is the least aesthetically pleasing basketball player, period. Like, he might be like the worst dude to watch, but his impact goes so much further. Much better defensive second half from him, from Naz Reid, from Jaden McDaniels. Carson, in the first half, Denver wins the total rebounding battle by 10. They grab 31 rebounds. Jokic himself has 15. They win the offensive rebounding battle by 5 in the first half. In the second half, that is flipped on its head. Minnesota wins the total rebounding battle by 15, and then they win the offensive rebounding battle by 5. That was huge in the second half. And, you know, when Denver's offense struggles, Minnesota's offense gets better, right? This is how this team wins. They win defensively, and then they create easy opportunities on the other end for their offense. They go on a 21-3 third quarter run, and it is totally powered by all the big game-breaking defensive plays they're able to make. They get a steal where Jaden McDaniels finishes hard through Christian Brown. Jokic gets stripped. It leads to an easy Ant transition dunk. Ant strips Jamal Murray, leads to an easy transition dunk. Later in this game, Conley gets a crucial steal on Jamal Murray that leads to an easy Ant corner 3. And that was the big difference to me in the second half, man. That's how you beat Minnesota. Your offense is clicking, and you force this team to beat you in the half court, and they couldn't. Once Denver stopped crashing the glass hard, started losing on offense, that's where they lost control of this game, because it allowed Minnesota to play the brand of basketball that they wanted to, winning defensively and turning it into easy opportunities on the other end. And I want to give a ton of credit to the Timberwolves, man. Anthony Edwards, great job, I thought, throughout this game, dealing with doubles consistently. But down the stretch in the second half, just playing great defense, awesome ball pressure throughout on Jamal Murray, man. He was wreaking havoc there. Karl-Anthony Towns, I thought, did a great job on Nikola Jokic when he was matched up with him. He gets that 5th foul late and then steps in the superhero. When you started the show, Carson, I thought you were going to say the best 2 words in sports were Naz Reid.
Oh, of course, of course.
And he owns the 4th quarter. Karl-Anthony Towns gets that 5th foul. Naz Reid comes up with 2 monster blocks on Jokic. He's got that big jelly layup through traffic, man. He's got a clutch offensive rebound off of a Gobert miss that leads to him getting some free throws. And the big play of the night, Ant misses that pull-up 3 on Aaron Gordon, and it leads to a monster putback jam. But it really is the collective, man. It's everybody defensively, and then it's guys doing their thing, man. McDaniels coming up, hitting some big shots. Mike Conley making some big shots. But it really is this collective team defense that won it for Minnesota in the second half, man.
This is the team that was built to beat Denver, and they did it, Logan. They bullied the bullies. Like, this was an outstanding performance from them, and the resilience alone is so ridiculously impressive. Like, after going down 3-2, dude, boy, that was a tough punch to take. And as dominant as they were through the first 2 games, Denver was humming offensively. And when that Denver offense is humming, a lot of teams in the league just don't have an answer. Minnesota is the one that is able to make them legitimately uncomfortable with their physicality and athleticism, both on the perimeter and the interior with their size. They did that in a big way in Game 6 and just knocked their teeth out. But of course, this one is the more impressive because you have to overcome not just a 20-point deficit, but a real off Ant game, dude. And where I do want to give him props is, first of all, for his leadership, because although we aren't in the locker room, I absolutely believe that he is vital to the culture of this team and to their willingness to withstand a challenge like this and ultimately come back. Like, he never wavered, dude. He never wavered in his confidence. He told them after game 5 that he would see them for a game 7. He said it would be the best game 7 in league history after game 6. Like, that dude just has a special makeup as an individual. And I think that is so contagious. And I think it is so massively beneficial to this entire team. He goes 6 of 24 in this one, but I thought he played a better second half. And really, just in a game where offense was this hard to come by, the attention that he drew, consistently drawing a second defender, was invaluable because everybody is struggling to get good shots. And when you have two dudes on the ball, then you swing the ball a couple times, you get an open corner 3 for a Mike Conley or a Jaden McDaniels, or you create an advantage for Naz Reid and you're closing out hard. Now he can attack off the bounce. Like, that was just absolutely pivotal in a game that was an absolute quintessential game 7 rock fight. Couldn't have been more different from the earlier game 7, which was like offense on steroids. Nobody could miss. This game had the normal nerves and physicality that we're used to. And Ant was ultimately able to do the things that he needed as a playmaker and made some big defensive plays. But where do you really win this one, Logan? It's with your size, it's with your athleticism, and it is with your generational defense. They showed why they are the team built to beat Denver, and they do just have that special dog factor. But this game completely swings when they slow down the Denver offense, because in the first half, again, they were missing shots early, but that second quarter, it's like, okay, Jamal is getting what he wants out of pick and roll. Jokic, it's not the most dominant scoring night, but he still had 13, 15, and 5 at the half. Like, Denver was creating much, much better shots. And Cat was just sensational on Jokic, and he was able to flatten out those post-ups. I think there's a strong case to be made that Karl-Anthony Towns guards Jokic better than anybody else on the planet, Logan. And we can give a lot of props to Rudy Gobert for what he does as a backline defender, as a roamer, and how that has instilled the confidence in Minnesota to deploy Cat as the primary post defender on Jokic. But Logan, there's that stretch in the third quarter. Rudy Gobert isn't on the floor. There isn't backline help from a generational rim protector. It is just Cat standing up this dude who 99.9% of players in the league simply can't. He bullies them. He gets to his touch shot making, and Cat is either forcing him to pass out or he's forcing him into these tough turnarounds. And so then the pressure is put on the other Nuggets to step up and beat them, and they just couldn't in this game. And Jokic remained aggressive as a scorer down the stretch, and he ended up getting some buckets, but the efficiency wasn't what we're used to. Cat deserves an immense amount of credit for that. And as you mentioned, the ball pressure down the stretch, like, you basically end this game forcing yet another Jamal Murray turnover with that ball pressure that had given him so much trouble early in this series. And then it's 4 offensive rebounds in the final 4 minutes. 4 offensive rebounds swung this game, dude. And you get it down to a 5-point game if you're Denver with 35 seconds on the clock. KCP completely misses a box out. Cat gets an easy putback. MPJ completely misses a box out earlier in the quarter, and Naz Reid gets that putback dunk. And also Nikola Jokic, who was dominant on the glass in the first half, he just gets beat in some of these spots too. Gobert beats him outright, and he isn't able to get a body on some of these guys. And I wonder if playing him 47 minutes was just too much, Logan, because he looked really, really exhausted down the home stretch of this game. But it's such a gritty, tough win, and that's what this Minnesota team is built to do, dude. This was an average regular season offense, and this was a rough offensive game, and they are still able to knock off the champs because nobody else can knock them off of their game like Minnesota does. That's the story of this game. That is the story of this team.
Yeah, they outscore them 60-37 in the second half, Carson. And
Incredible.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned with Ant, because we really saw him struggle to score the ball in the first half. I believe he ends up with either 2 points or 4. I mean, he was getting bottled up. You know, he kept dealing with doubles, and that's a huge component of why. I know we've had our disagreements on where, you know, Ant is among the stars today. I had him as my number 2 guy, but it is that gravity that you touch on. Like, the constant defensive attention that just leads to easy offense for his teammates. And when they're not making his shots, no, it doesn't look pretty, but he gets that attention all game long. And I want to give him so much credit for his decision-making and his playmaking throughout this series, because in the first half, man, he is facing all those looks and he is making great decisions. Like, He hits Cat. Cat swings it to Gobert, where Gobert gets blocked by MPJ. He's swinging shots to Conley and NA-Dub, and they're just missing open threes. Like, I thought throughout this series, man, it wasn't perfect. Like, he's got that one weak side kick where KCP intercepts him, but I thought Ant's decision-making and playmaking was phenomenal throughout this series. And granted, like I said, you do see some of his limitations. His pull-up jump shooting was bound to come back down to earth, right, Carson? We kind of see that here in this one. He hit some big shots, but it's not nails, and just he's hitting every look that he takes, but he consistently gets that gravity, man. And that's a distinction that I want to make on why I have Ant so high on players that I want. Like, I think he's the second best player in basketball right now behind Jokic, and I would take him over SGA. I would take him over Tatum. I would take him over Luka. Like, Luka faces similar looks like this, and I think it's really close between the two. And SGA faces crowded paints. Like, you have to divert that kind of attention to Ant consistently, and I thought his gravity was huge in this game, and a big reason why, like you mentioned, they got so many open looks in the second half. Like, the numbers aren't pretty. It's not super efficient, but he just consistently creates open looks. And then the leadership factor is huge, Carson. So many teams would put their head down after that. Did you see that one camera shot where they panned to him in the third or the fourth quarter? All eyes are on him, man. He is rallying the troops single-handedly, like, get on my back. I am going to carry you through. We are not putting our heads down. And I love that component about Ant, man. It is so rare to see a 22-year-old with this kind of composure in a Game 7 in one of the toughest environments in basketball. This is a tough place to play. And I think he kept him in this basketball game with his mentality, man. Like, Ant has never wavered. And I think that is one of the most endearing things about Ant is his character, his leadership. And I think specifically for a roster like this, I think Minnesota has a lot of great complementary players to Anthony Edwards, Cat, Gobert, Jaden McDaniels. They're great. They need a guy like this to rally them, man, because I don't think Cat and Gobert are some of the most, mentally tough guys. I think they need a guy like Ant, and he is one of the most mentally tough and fiercest competitors in all of basketball. And that's just another big reason of why I have him as one of the guys that I want more than anybody else in basketball, man. It is that composure, that leadership factor, along with his gravity, man. And he perseveres, man, in a game where he's not shooting the basketball well, when he's not scoring, the way he normally does, he still finds a way to leave his imprint on this game and make consistent winning impact plays. And he gets them over the hump, man. I can't commend him enough for what he did in this Game 7, despite not scoring the ball well.
I love Ant. I do think this is not the performance to give glowing Ant reviews, and that's not to say that he didn't do important things, but at the end of the day, he was 6 of 24, and he was soundly outplayed by both Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray in this game. I love Ant. 2 in the league is just too high, in my opinion, right now. Like, I think he's knocking on those top 5 conversations. I think he's been a top 2 player in this postseason, but ultimately the sample size that we've seen in the playoffs isn't large enough for me to elevate him all the way above a Luka Doncic, a Giannis Antetokounmpo. I do think, especially when you're talking about Luka, there's just a totally different level of offensive mastery there, of impeccable decision-making, and Ant struggles to finish in this one. He really struggles from mid-range. He struggles as a scorer in every way. So he did enough, but if the team didn't pull through, Logan, that would not be the narrative. The narrative would be Anthony Edwards is a disaster, because he was really bad in the first half of this game. He did enough in the second half. To me, all of the MVPs of this game for Minnesota, it's about the supporting cast. The supporting cast was infinitely better than Denver's. And I think Karl-Anthony Towns is the MVP of this game, Logan, because we talk about the value of Ant drawing a second defender and creating open shots for others, but Minnesota shot 39% from the field in this game. Cat goes 8 of 14 with 23 points and 11 rebounds. As you mentioned, absolutely amazing on Jokic defensively, and offensively, just brutalizing mismatches, just getting great shots for himself whenever he had a favorable switch. That was so valuable in this game. And I think that this is a run from Karl-Anthony Towns in its totality that deserves a whole lot of recognition and a whole lot of respect, because he hasn't been perfect. But again, Ant hasn't been perfect. Ant's been amazing, but he's had some of these clunker performances. Cat has consistently been super efficient. He has defended at a level that is so much higher than what we've seen from him in previous seasons. And the second that things went south for Minnesota, it felt like everybody turned to scapegoat Cat. Cat's not good enough. Cat can't be the number 2. I don't think that's true. I think Cat can be the number 2, and that's not to say that he doesn't have his dumb moments. He fouls too much. Sometimes he gets out of control trying to attack these mismatches and puts the ball on the floor for too long and turns it over. Like, he's far from perfect, but he is damn good. And he's one of the greatest shooting big men that we've ever seen. And he runs 4 or 5 pick and rolls and dissects you as a playmaker. And he guarded Nikola Jokic as well as anybody on the planet. And he held down the glass at a really high level. And he finished this game with that putback. So there's a tendency to make it Ant, which I get because the dude's amazing. And he has more aura than anybody on the planet. And of course, he's the guy. But this game is Cat. And this game is the collective supporting cast, dude. And you mentioned Nas, like the 2 blocks on Jokic down the stretch, scoring 8 fourth quarter points. He is just an absolute weapon because as much as I'm giving props to Cat, you take him off the floor in this game because of the foul trouble, and Nas is able to supplement a lot of that value. Offensively, he's just literally a big guard, dude. Like, we all know how nasty the in and out dribble is, but it's not just the 40% 3-point shooting, as you mentioned, from the corners above the break. It's the ability to put the ball on the floor to attack closeouts, and then the body control on these finishes working around Jokic. What an absolute stud. And I want to give a lot of props to Jaden McDaniels because I thought that his offense was massive in this game. It was also massive last game. This is a guy who was struggling offensively earlier in this series. We know he is probably the best perimeter defender on the planet, but he was knocking down his threes in this game, had several big drives, 4 offensive boards. He was massive. And Rudy Gobert, Logan, the first half was abysmal offensively. One of the worst halves you could conceive of from a basketball player. He puts up 3 floaters. He misses them all terribly. He tries to isolate Jokic. He has 2 turnovers. Like, it was the epitome of bad Rudy Gobert offensively. But as that first half comes to a close, at least they're able to identify some mismatches for him, and he starts drawing fouls off of switches. And then in the second half, yes, he makes 2 absolute bullshit shots. Like the switching hand banked straight on runner. Of course, that's a ridiculous shot. The fadeaway, I mean, come on, bro. Like, that's ridiculous. That's some game 7 magic. But you know what, Logan? He made those 2 shots. He hit his free throws consistently, and he performed on the glass. A couple of huge offensive rebounds, and he protected the hell out of the rim. So I love the construction of this team. The biggest concern has always been, like, do they have enough offensive skill, right? Can they hang with the best offenses in basketball, as great as that defense is? And it's not always the prettiest, but my God, they are so special defensively. They are so great on the glass, and they have enough athletes and they have enough shot makers that the answer is yes. They've proven that.
Yeah, I agree with you too. This is about the supporting cast wholeheartedly. McDaniels comes up with huge rebounds, and I'm going to give some props to Karl-Anthony Towns here in a minute. The final thing I want to be clear on with Ant is this game is not about him, but I also don't think the stat sheet accurately reflects how effective he was in terms of just creating shots. Like, you say he had a horrible first half. I just thought his shot was off. Like, he goes 4 points. 1 of 7 from the field, 1 of 3 from deep. It's not pretty at all. And huge props to Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, how they defended him in this game. But I just thought he generated so many great looks for his teammates that aren't going to appear there. Like, a lot of people were characterizing this as like a horrible first half. And I didn't think it was as bad as the stat sheet may make it seem. But this is about the supporting cast. And Cat, dude, so many people have their opinions on Cat. And I think he gets unfairly criticized in this one. He just does his job, dude. He wasn't facing similar coverages from earlier games, and I think that was crucial. But also, he sees the opportunity. You know, he's not drawing these doubles, and he is drawing smaller defenders. He babies Christian Brown on a couple possessions where he just, I'm bigger than you, dude. I'm going to go get a bucket. Yeah. He's got a huge block on Reggie Jackson in transition too, dude. Like, Cat hit some big threes. He had an awesome game, man. And I don't want this to get overlooked by Ant because I do think he was the best player, man. Consistently, he brought it offensively when nobody else had it. And then McDaniels just hit his open looks. Like, man, NAW, dude, was making me want to punch a hole through my TV, dude. Yeah. He was playing in every open 3. Everybody else wasn't. This is about the supporting cast, man. But I do want to give some props to Ant because I just don't think the numbers reflected enough. And then Gobert, dude. God, dude, I just have so many bad notes. Multiple moving screens. He fouls out in this one. He's got the ugly fadeaway. His hands suck. I do think he might be like the least skilled offensive starter in basketball, man. That dude is like he's like a baby deer, man. But shout out. Rudy Gobert was definitely crucial to this comeback. I think you hit on a key, though, Carson. I think this team is beautifully constructed in their hierarchy. You know, we talk about a lot of different teams, and I've been very critical on Boston because I think Boston is one of these teams that doesn't have that kind of natural, hey, we're going to go to this guy. This is your role. You know, it's a little bit of, hey, let's get a Derek White possession. Let's get a Drew Holiday possession. I love the way that Minnesota understands and respects their hierarchy. Like, Ann is the top dog. We're going to get him the rock. We're going to run through him. Cat is our number 2, and everybody else is going to fill their roles. I think it's a distinct advantage that they have over other teams. And I don't want to put you on the spot here, Carson. We are going to do a preview here later.
Yeah.
I think Minnesota is my title favorite moving forward, man. I think that I'm going to take them to win the chip. I think that, I mean, that was always how I was going to go. Whoever won this series, I was going to take them to win the chip. I think Minnesota is my title front runner now, man. I think I would take them to win the chip. Or are you with me on that?
I'm with you. I've been feeling the same way, that probably whoever comes out of the series would be the title favorite for me. They are just capable of unleashing a level defensively that is so, so special, dude. I said I thought they were the best defense since the 04 Pistons, and then the Nuggets offense went crazy, and there were some people who were like, oh, I thought this defense was so great. It is. The Nuggets offense is also just special, but to be able to just stall them, to be able to halt their production for stretches like Minnesota did in game 2, in game 6, in this one, they hold Denver overall in this series, even with that incredible 3-game stretch, games 3 through 5 from Denver's offense, to an offensive rating of under 107, Logan. This offense last year, en route to a title, posted an offensive rating of over 118 in the playoffs. It was the best we've ever seen from a champion. Simply put, they just have all the ingredients. They have, as we've mentioned, outstanding post defenders on Jokic, Cat being the best, but I thought Naz Reid had a lot of impressive moments, more impressive than I expected. Gobert is the special back line defender. They can dictate the glass against Denver in a way that most teams just can't. And of course, they have outstanding perimeter defenders. And so they are able to navigate screens expertly. They are able to apply this ball pressure and this physicality with Jamal Murray that really makes him struggle. It's one of the best defenses to me in NBA history. And this series just proved that. We all saw them just put the Suns in absolute hell for a series, but to be able to do it against this Nuggets offense, to me, is up another level. So let's talk about Denver, Logan, because what a roller coaster of a series this was for them. But when they went back up 3-2, man, I thought they were going to finish it off. I just thought they are now comfortable enough offensively. They are humming there. What do you blame for them ultimately not coming through?
Mostly the supporting cast, man. And, you know, I know people are going to be critical of Jokic, right? It's the star attribution theory. We talk about this all the time, Carson. It's the star quarterback losing the big game. He could throw for 400 yards and 4 TDs, but if his team loses, guess who's going to be the poster boy for the loss? The quarterback. And so Jokic does not take a lot of the blame here. Now, I think he could have shot better from behind the arc. Obviously, he has a lot of opportunities in this game. He goes 2 of 10 from behind the arc, as Reggie consistently mentioned throughout the broadcast. In these playoffs, he shoots 14 to 52. Like, his shot was just off from behind the arc. But I'm not going to be super critical of Jokic. Like, he gives you 32 points, 18 boards, and 7 assists in this one. And at a stretch in this game, it's maybe better, but the number that I have, Carson, he scores 14 of 17 straight points for Denver. And he is consistently generating open looks for his teammates. To me, it is much more on the supporting cast here. The biggest guy is Michael Porter Jr. Like, oh my gosh, man. He has not had a good series. In this series, he gives you, these numbers are worse than this. This is coming into the game. 11 points on 40-35 splits, 53% true shooting. In games 4 through 6, he gives you 6 points on 38% true shooting. He's shooting 20% from behind the arc. This is a guy who all of his value, not all of it, sometimes he can be an impactful rebounder and a decent defender, but 90% of his value is going to come from his ability to shoot that rock. He gives you 7 points on 3 of 12 from the field and 1 of 6 from behind the arc. It is just embarrassing, man. Michael Porter Jr. played an embarrassing series in this one, man. They just had to get more from him. Jamal Murray, great first half. Kind of been the tale of Jamal Murray in this series, man. Is he going to play a full 2 halves every single game? And Jamal Murray has the luxury of playing alongside a guy that is going to generate so many high-quality looks for him all game, man. With Jokic's ability to set screens, with Jokic's ability to draw two defenders and get you an open look. Yeah, sure, he gives you 24 points in the first half. In the second, he gives you 11 points on 1 of 7 from behind the arc. Just not good enough, man. Consistently good looks. And then this isn't just a this game problem. Last game, he gives you 10 points on 4 of 18 shooting. Game 5, he gives you 16 points. We all remember game 2, he gives you 8 points on 3 of 18. He's just been inconsistent in halves. And Jokic just needs somebody to help alleviate the pressure. And that's the double-edged sword with this, Carson, is when the offense goes cold, Denver doesn't impact the game in these, other ways. Like, it really is predicated on their offense consistently coming. That's what we bet on, right? This is not a team that is consistently going to be great defensively. This is going to consistently be great on the glass. This is a team that has to win on offense.
I don't know. I mean, I thought they were pretty good defensively, and they are really good on the glass. It's just Minnesota is more athletic than them. They are every bit as huge. They're every bit as good on the glass. So their offense obviously has to be better than it was in this series.
That's what I'm saying. The offense is offset by all the other advantages that Minnesota has. So when you grind to a standstill like this and nobody can hit a shot, you lose the other advantages that you have, and you set up Minnesota for these cake opportunities on the other end. You have to keep winning offensively if you're Denver, and they don't, man. And the one play that encapsulates it for me, man, fourth quarter, running down the floor, you got an opportunity in transition, man, a fundamental basketball principle. And I know this has changed with the 3-ball, but it's like, dude, when you're out in transition, I want a shot at the rim. MPJ shoots a stupid transition pull-up 3, and that's where I was like, damn, man, this game is wraps. I did think Denver had a good defensive – they played an awesome defensive first half, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But down the second half, nobody is hitting a shot. The Denver supporting cast is so limited, and that's another reality of Denver's team, man, and their roster construction. Minnesota has guys off the bench that they can put in spots, and they can impact the game. If it's Naz Reid, if it's NAW, he has a bad game, but he's been consistent. Denver doesn't have anybody, man. It's Christian Braun coming off the bench, and I thought Christian Braun played a great game defensively, but you just don't have other guys that can create easy looks. It's all Jokic, and it's all perimeter opportunities for these guys. And when you can take away those looks and make the supporting cast kill you, and they don't, that's how you beat Denver, man. And that's the recipe. I'm so disappointed, man. It's not just this game. It's not just this second half. There were so many opportunities in so many games for Denver supporting cast to emphatically slam the door on Minnesota, and they just don't get the job done. To me, this is a complete letdown for basically all of Denver supporting cast, but mostly Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., man. I'm so disappointed with those guys.
Totally agree. And I do think that Jokic will absolutely get a disproportionate amount of blame for what we saw. Like, the guy still averaged 29, 13, and 9 in these playoffs on 63% true shooting and played 3 perfect basketball games in a row with his back against the wall. But, Logan, this is a guy who I consider probably the best offensive player ever, and who we talk about as, like, knocking on the door now of being a top 15 player ever. And so you have to hold him to an incredibly high standard because of that. And in this game, even though he gives you 34, 19, and 7, right? He was the best player on the floor in this game. He was. But he wasn't overwhelmingly dominant enough. And there's just little things like not ending possessions on the defensive glass late in this game. Frankly, I just thought his defensive effort late in this game wasn't good enough. And maybe that is just fatigue. But that's tough. Like, don't play him 47 minutes then, because he did look worn down. And you mentioned the 3-point shot. Like, that could swing this game. He goes 2 of 10 from deep. He makes 2 big ones in the fourth quarter. He also leaves several on the table. And that's the biggest difference between last year's run and this year's. That's kind of the only difference. Like, outside of that, he was still so dominant offensively in this run. But it's going from shooting 45% from deep, unconscious in last year's playoffs, to 26% from deep, as cold as we've seen him. So I don't think there's any argument that anybody on the planet other than him is the best player alive right now. I still think you are looking at an overwhelming historic level of offensive greatness. And for the most part, he really did his job in this matchup. As much as anything, the problem here is just shooting, dude. The Nuggets shoot under 29% from deep in their playoff losses. We saw it in the first round where they were consistently struggling from beyond the arc against LA. We see it in this round, which is just insane because 3 of the Nuggets starters are year in, year out 40% three-point shooters, with KCP, with MPJ, and with Jamal Murray, and all of them struggled throughout this run. KCP isn't going to catch a ton of flack just because he's obviously not like always going to be a high volume offensive player, but him going under 33% from deep in this run, giving you just 8 points per game. He missed a lot of good looks in the totality of this playoff run and tonight. MPJ is absolutely the main culprit, though, as you mentioned. Last 4 games now, so taking the numbers you mentioned and including tonight, 6 points per game on 35% true shooting. 6 points per game on 35% true shooting, Logan.
Hey, Carson, how much money is he getting paid?
$35 million next year, I believe. His contract, when he signed it, there was potential for it to go up to $200 million with different incentives and accolades. That's just insane. Like, you are paid to do one thing above all else, Logan. You mentioned, like, yes, he's improved as a rebounder and as a defender, to make your jump shots at an elite level, to be up there for the best catch and shoot guy in the league. And he just wasn't even close to that. But if we look at like this run as a whole, I think you could argue that Jamal is the most to blame. And that doesn't apply to tonight as much because he was phenomenal in the first half of this game. Like, absolutely phenomenal. And the two-man game with Jokic was just deadly. Like, Jokic was screening the shit out of dudes and getting Jamal a ton of separation coming around those screens, which has been an issue. He was using those hesitation dribbles to freeze defenders. He was getting downhill. His tough shot making was on. Like, Jamal was quite good in this game. But overall, he gives you 20 points per game on 47% true shooting in these playoffs, Logan. Coming into tonight, it was the least efficient postseason by an 18-point per game scorer since Julius Randle in 2021. When not only was it playoff Julius Randle, he was facing a good Hawks defense, but he had 0 high-level threats on his team. Like, that was the worst team offense to make the playoffs in a long time. We thought Magic Cavs was ugly. Like, we're talking about Reggie Bullock being their second best offensive player at times. Dude, like, that team was so bad offensively, and he's drawing all this defensive attention. Jamal is playing with Nikola Jokic, man. So that's just inexcusable. And of course, he's been bothered by the calf strain, but consistently being funneled into the exact sort of shots that the defense wants, where he's taking these tough mid-range looks and these floaters, and he's not able to get downhill because of the rim protection, and he's feeling the back pressure. And so he just had a brutally inefficient postseason. And the big picture takeaway for him, again, like, I do think the calf injury is a factor here, but there's a gap between him and some of the dudes who he was compared to after last postseason, because he was so unbelievably good in that run. His shot making was out of this world. But when you start talking about him as a sort of top 15, top 20 guy, I just don't think he's quite that. And this is as a guy who wears and owns a shirt and has for years that literally says this guy loves Jamal Murray, because my God, he is one of the toughest buckets that I've ever seen. But it is ultimately just the difference in the ease that some of these other guys have offensively. Donovan Mitchell, right, is just in a different stratosphere, but that was a conversation last year. But again, it's the combination of athletic advantages, the ability to get downhill so much more easily. De'Aaron Fox, the same thing, just that game-breaking quickness, like the load that those dudes carry as offensive number ones and the athletic advantage that they have. Jamal is always going to be so dependent on his tough pull-up jumpers falling, and there's a volatility to that. And that's why he does lay a lot of these clunkers in the regular season, and historically he's been able to avoid those in the playoffs, but the guy's just gotten red hot. Like, his play style, there is just inherently going to be nights when you don't get to the line at a high volume and you don't get to the rim at a high volume. It's true for every scorer in the history of this sport. Like, there is going to be volatility with that. And I think what this series exposed is just their lack of really high-end perimeter athletes and their lack of multiple ball handlers, because, as we mentioned, they were able to overwhelm Jamal athletically with their ball pressure, and there was ultimately nobody else who could beat them with consistent dribble penetration. And they rely on Jokic just bullying his way into the paint and creating great shots for everybody else. And they rely on their jump shooters being fantastic. And when your jump shooters are ice cold, and when this team is built to guard Jokic better than anybody else, that's when you start to see some of the cracks in the armor. So I'm not at all in panic mode for Denver. And I have already seen some people saying, oh, Denver's been exposed. Minnesota's not even that great. No, dude, this Minnesota defense is unreal. And this Minnesota team is great. And I think they have a very, very strong chance to win the title. But Denver does have to improve going forward. And also the depth, as you mentioned, like Minnesota had 7 studs, dude, and they were able to deploy NAW with a closing lineup in the Sun series, Nas in a closing lineup in this series. Denver never had that luxury, even though their bench outperformed expectations overall in this run. Like we're talking about Justin Holiday stepping up and making shots. We're talking about Christian Braun giving you effort plays. We're not talking about, oh, we have one of the 10 best perimeter defenders on the planet who can also shoot 38% from 3 in NAW. We have one of the most skilled offensive bigs who's also defending his ass off in Naz Reid. That's a big difference. So I think they need to add a bench ball handler who is more consistent than Reggie Jackson. I think they need to add a legitimate bench big, which they have just never had. And as much as I love the configuration of the starting 5, I do wonder if they just need somebody who maybe doesn't have to start, but who is legitimately good, who can play alongside Jamal in these lineups so they just have more dribble penetration and quickness from the perimeter.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of areas that Denver needs to address. I think they need a backup 5 that they can play in non-Jokic minutes just to give him a breather. This is now 2 seasons running where he has really not had anybody they can turn to. I want another big, like, athletic bench wing. And again, those are easier said than found, but another guy that can – they just need some size off the bench too, man. Like, this is a really small team outside of Jokic and Gordon and MPJ. And then, yeah, another, like, just score, Carson. You know, and I'm going to say this guy, I don't mean it in the direct mold because this is like the apex of this archetype, but like a Malik Monk, like or even, you know what, man, not even a Malik, like, bro, Jaden Hardy, you know what I mean? Like a guy who can manufacture something for himself a little more consistently. And
yeah,
I do want to get on Denver for one more thing, and it's the fact that the future song, man, I think Denver got too comfortable. I think they were kind of kicking back after that first half, man. We got the 20-point lead. We're dogging these boys. We're at home. I think they just got too comfortable. There are 3 different, like, dude, I was amazed, Carson, at the intensity, the effort, and the game plan from Denver in the first half. There are 3 different stretches in this game where Minnesota doesn't score a point. There's a stretch in the first quarter. They don't score for 5 minutes. And then there's 2 stretches in the second quarter to the third where they don't score for 3 minutes and they don't score for another 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Like, Denver's defense was immaculate. Doubling Ant, forcing other guys to kill him, not doubling Cat, making him go one-on-one with guys. They were recovering and rotating quickly. Everybody was contesting and blocking shots. Like, MPJ blocks a shot. Aaron Gordon has a big one. Christian Braun comes up with one. I think Reggie Jackson comes up with one. And then they were crashing the hell out of the glass. Like, I was just really disappointed, man. I thought we saw a real big switch flip where, I don't know, Denver just got disengaged. They took their foot off the pedal and they just let the rope up, man. That's probably the area where I'm most disappointed with Denver, man. Like, I can understand guys not hitting shots. I can understand the offense going cold for a stretch. Like you mentioned it, dude. They got big dogged. They got big dogged in the second half. And it's just a bad look. Like all of this, man, the 20-point lead at home. But where I'm not going to let Denver off the hook, man, is just the defensive effort. It looked like a completely different team in the second half, man. That's where I was most disappointed with this team.
The championship malaise was real for Denver throughout this playoff run. There were just too many spots where they got complacent. You can get away with that against the Lakers. And by the way, it was still too close for comfort in several of those games, and they have to just rely on having the best player on the floor and Jamal Murray delivering some clutch shots. But in this series, it's just a different level of intensity and athleticism and defense that you're going to get from Minnesota night after night. And we saw that in game 6, dude. Like, Denver kind of punted on that game. And it's one thing when you can't knock down a 3, which obviously was a brutal shooting night. And so that dug them a hole, but also their effort was just unserious in that basketball game. And Minnesota came out with just this sort of voracious hunger that is just built into their identity as a basketball team. And I'm with you. I thought up 20, again, who makes all of the high effort plays down the stretch of this game? It's Minnesota. And that quite literally swung this game. The offensive rebounds are the difference in this game in the fourth quarter. So it is disappointing for Denver. There's no 2 ways about it, because we can sing all the praises of this Minnesota team and they deserve it. But you were in position. You were in position. You reclaimed this series and you were getting all the flowers in the world because it was, oh my God, look at this team. They are different from the defending champs. And I believe that. And by the way, I still do believe that in the sense that I think they'll be back and they will be a front runner for the title again next year. Like, this is a team that is built to last with all these pieces in place, but you didn't finish the job. You let somebody else come onto your home floor and take it from you. And that's just a legitimate advantage that this Minnesota team has over them. They never stop coming. They never stop bringing their peak effort, and they deserve an immense amount of credit for that. All right, Logan, we're going to take a quick break. Then on the other side of this, we'll talk about a Game 7 that was historic in another way, that being Knicks Pacers, after some quick words from DraftKings. The 82-game preseason is in the books, and it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code NERDS only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
So the Timberwolves had the biggest Game 7 comeback in league history, Logan. The Indiana Pacers had the best shooting performance in a Game 7 in league history. In a playoff game in league history, I should say. Over 67% from the field. Unbelievable. 70 points in the first half to knock off the New York Knicks on their home floor. What did you take away from this Indiana performance?
You can't understate like how great this offense is, man. It is so much fun to watch. They're so elite. Like, this is a historical performance in so many ways. You mentioned it. They break the record for field goal percentage in a playoff game, period. What? They break the record for field goal percentage in a playoff half in the play-by-play era, 76%. They break the record for points in the first quarter of a Game 7 with 39. And at a point in this game, they were 27 of 32 from the field. They had missed a whopping 5 shots. They shoot over 54% from deep. They go 13 to 24. Like, this is just such an elite offense, dude. And it's everybody. The constant ball movement and off-ball relocation is crazy. Like, there are just so few teams. I don't know if I've ever seen a team that is committed to, like, unselfishness like this, man. Like, we talk about Haliburton and how his play style permeates through to the rest of the roster, where guys are just fundamentally unselfish. They want to play winning ball. They want to work the rock. They want to find the open shot. And it's just so admirable, man. Everybody is committed, every single offensive possession, to finding the best and most high-quality shot. And it just shines through, man. Like, just making the unselfish kick and finding it, and they capitalized on it. I thought the tempo was huge in this one. There's a lot of plays you can look at throughout this series where even if the Knicks get a bucket on this end, Indiana inbounds the ball immediately, is right back up the court before they can even get 2 or 3 defenders down the floor. They were the number 2 team in offensive rating in the regular season, just behind Boston, and they've been the number 1 offense in these playoffs. And I think, considering Denver's out now, and maybe with their shooting woes, they even won, I think this is the best offense remaining in these playoffs, man. And you got to give a huge amount of credit to Tyrese Haliburton, dude. He's been passive. He's, not wanted to put his foot on the pedal in these playoffs. And there's one play in this game where I was like, Tyrese, come on, man. He drives to the hoop. He's got that easy layup at the rim, and he kicks it out. I want less of those plays, but still, Haliburton does his thing, man. 26 points, 4 boards, 6 assists on 10 of 17 shooting, 3 of 6 from behind the arc. He gives you 14 points in the first quarter, and it is just such an efficient and controlled series, man. 21 points on 69% true shooting. I thought Pascal Siakam deserves a ton of credit with what he did with these mismatches. We harped on it ever since the OG Anunoby injury came through. We were like, Siakam's got to be the guy that stepped up, and he did, man. Anytime he got a mismatch, was barreling down, was getting good looks. But it's everybody, man. It's the collective. Like I said, like, everybody is committed to getting open looks, man, from Nesmith to Siakam to Turner to Nembhard, TJ McConnell. Like, everybody eats, but it is this collective effort that we're going to hunt these shots. We're going to find it. We're all going to – and that's the benefit that Indiana And who cares about defense, man? Everybody can put the ball on the floor. Everybody can shoot. Everybody can get downhill. It's remarkable, man. There is such easy offense created, and the injuries were just a little too much to overcome here for New York in this one, man. We'll talk about the flip side for this one, but wow, man, New York creates such consistent, easy offense, man, and there's just a collective commitment to doing that from every player up and down this roster, man. This is one of the most skilled basketball teams I think I've ever seen, man. Their offense is historic.
They really are an outstanding offense. And this is an all-time performance, dude, because you don't just shoot the highest field goal percentage ever in a playoff game. You do that in a game 7 on the road in Madison Square Garden. That is absolutely ridiculous. They have a 122 offensive rating right now in the playoffs with a minimum of 10 games. That is the best ever in a postseason. It's really, really special stuff. And you mentioned, who cares about defense? We've referred many times to the Rick Carlisle quote about how you can't date a girl if she can't get a stop. It's a very convoluted point, but a great one nonetheless. I'm not sure when the last time a team that was 24th in regular season defensive rating made the conference finals. Like, I'll do some digging on that because that is exceptionally rare. It's rare to win a series with a defense that lowly rated, and you just compensate for it by being a special offense. And comparing them to Denver is interesting. Obviously, right now, the Pacers are at their absolute peak and Denver is at their low point, but the difference is in the ceiling that Indiana has, in my opinion, because of the pace that they play with and because of the number of ball handlers that they have on the floor, right? Like, that's where we talk about how Denver is so dependent on creating shots for their spot up shooters, having two dudes who can do that. Indiana, there are a lot of dudes who can get into the teeth of the defense. Andrew Nembhard and TJ, both such crafty drivers. They're getting to the rim or they're facilitating. And then Hallie and Siakam were both phenomenal in this game. Like, I love hyper-aggressive Hallie so much. And I love when he remembers that he is one of the best three-point shooters on the planet. And he is getting to those sidestep threes, getting to his mid-range game and elevating, keeping his dribble alive to get to the step-back three. He is such a special offensive player. And early in this year was doing some stuff that was historically very rare. Three-point shooting volume and efficiency we haven't seen outside of Steph, averaging 25 and 12, like a combination of scoring and playmaking you just don't see. And he's been different post-hamstring injury. And this postseason, he's been inconsistent in terms of the aggression. But I do believe that next year, when you are looking at healthy, in-rhythm Hallie, he's going to be one of the 15 or so best players on the planet, clearly one of the 5 to 10 best offensive players. And I think that he is getting close to that form right now. He was really good down the home stretch of this series outside of game 5, really was the only letdown. And Siakam came out raining everything. You mentioned mismatch attacking, pushing in transition, hitting from mid-range, popping. Like, it's just an incredible collective performance. Aaron Nesmith goes 8 of 8. Miles Turner was excellent as a popper. This is the vision for Indiana. You have two complementary stars. You have your great pick and roll ball handler. You have a play finishing, versatile big who is also excellent running the floor, as is Haliburton. You have shooting everywhere. And yeah, they shot the lights out from 3 in this game, but they didn't even have to have an insane offensive performance. And you play with crazy pace, and then you just have dudes up and down the roster who can make plays. The offensive balance here is incredible, and the versatility of these dudes. Like, again, it's so far from just having standstill spot-up shooters. You have mid-range shot makers with TJ and Andrew Nembhard. You have really good decision makers. It's just tough to see a version of this game that they didn't lose. They were absolutely thick. And I think this game makes you optimistic about the Pacers' future. Like, of course, this is a very convenient path to the Eastern Conference Finals. Them getting the Bucks without Giannis and even without Dame for 2 games, and then getting the very, very injured Knicks. And the conference as a whole is weak this year. Like, I don't want to overreact to the Pacers conference finals because most years, or even this year, if health isn't such a factor, I do not think they get there. But that offense just does not stop. Like, they averaged over 1.3 points per possession in transition in these playoffs, and they're an 81st percentile half-court offense. And I think the Siakam trade paid off. Like, the vision there has been realized. You have so much offensive punch. Of course, long-term, they'll need to get better defensively, but it was enough to get them through the conference finals. And If you told Pacers fans before this year they were in the conference finals, you'd be pretty thrilled about that.
I think there's some merit to what you mentioned, though, about, I'm not going to take too much about this, about the Pacers. I do think they had an easy path, but I think there's merit to playing your brand of basketball. Like Minnesota plays that defensive
Absolutely.
brand of basketball where they are going to force you to play their game. And once they did that, they ran away in the second half. When Indiana has a game like this where their offense is just clicking, all right, Knicks, we're going to get in a shootout, track meet style. Let's go. Outgun me. They couldn't. Like, it's a weapon. It's a weapon that you can weaponize in certain matchups. And again, I think the Knicks win this at full health. I really do. I just think they're the better team, but I think there's merit to it. I'm deep in the stats right now, Carson. I have the two most recent teams that are lowest. One of them's an outlier. I think that it's kind of a phony number.
Okay.
Who do you think is the last team?
Can I tell you my first thought?
How low
are we going? How low are we going?
You're not going to believe this. There was a team, and again, this is a stinky number. They were 29th in defensive rating, but it's a fake number. Oh,
yes. The 2016 Cavs.
2018, actually, but yes.
2018 Cavs. But the 2016 Cavs, I think, were low, too.
Let's see. 2016 Cavs were...
Maybe I'm wrong.
They were 10th in defensive rating.
Okay.
2018, I'm going back further because I'm interested in finding out where they rank. Who do you think is second? Do you have a guess for that?
Second? What's the number? Maybe the number will jog my memory.
They were 18th in defensive rating. Another kind of outlier run.
Not the 2019 Blazers, is it? Because that was not a good defensive team.
That's a good guess. Not the Blazers. Similar in that kind of an outlier run.
Not the 2015 Rockets, is it?
No, it's the Atlanta Hawks when they went with Trae Young.
I thought about that team earlier. Yeah, that makes a lot. They defended well in that playoff run, though.
What's so remarkable, dude, is it's just rare. You talk about winning a playoff series, dude. It's just rare that, wow. And then I think it's the 2010 Suns, ranked 24th.
Yeah.
They're the next team, 24th in defensive rating. So those are the only three teams that you can really ballpark it with. And how interesting, another, completely offensive-oriented team. But, yeah, the 2010 Suns that's the only real team because that's a phony number.
And the 2017 Cavs were 21st, too. I remember that they had multiple that were 20th or lower.
But it's ridiculous, man. It's rare that you win a playoff series. It's rare that you get this far. It's rare that you even make the freaking playoffs with a defensive that bad, man. But again,
worst defense in the playoffs this year.
How do you counteract it, man? You can just outgun them, and that's what got Indiana this far, man. It's an offbeat style. It's an easier path, but here we are, man. Indiana live in the flesh. I kind of shocked, but the Siakam trade is really what does it for him, man. Sure, things break your way, but that's what happens, man. You're going to have freak injuries. You're going to have these things happen. Siakam's what put this team over the hump, man. I think it's a home run trade deadline move. And how weird is that, man? Two teams that are in the conference finals this year, their entire seasons completely flipped by making some trade deadline moves, man. Siakam with the Pacers and then PJ and Gafford with Dallas. It's
very true.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I want to give props to more dudes, though. With some specific numbers, we already talked about their contributions, but TJ McConnell, over his last 8 games, 13 and 6.5 on 54% shooting from the field, and makes several key defensive plays in this game. Was really good on Brunson just overall, but steals the inbound during that pivotal stretch where the Knicks had gained momentum, right? They cut that lead down to 6, and then they have 4 turnovers in a matter of just a couple minutes. He strips Alec Burks on a 2-on-1, like, literally the perfect backup point guard. The perfect backup point guard. Makes impeccable decisions, competes like a wild man defensively, gets downhill so consistently, has the mid-range game. If TJ McConnell could shoot threes reliably, NBA All-Star. Not actually, but like absolute dog. Andrew Nembhard, Logan, in these playoffs is shooting 57% from the field and 49% from 3. True 3-level scorer and a legit playmaker. And Miles Turner, 17.5 points per game on 63% true shooting, has been so great as a pick and pop big, has been comfortable putting the ball on the floor, has had some aggressive drives. Like, they just had more weapons, and they have a special amount of weapons. I don't know if there's any team in the league that has this many weapons where you're talking about 8 good offensive players. Obi has been legit good in this run. Like, it's just so impressive. And the Knicks really never had a chance in this one. And I held out hope in this team, but they were completely outclassed. And there was some poor defensive effort early, particularly in transition, but the Pacers got whatever they want, kind of regardless of that. And OG clearly wasn't right, couldn't even play in this game after the few minutes. Brunson was struggling early, and when Brunson's struggling, you're just not going to win. And Indiana did a really nice job on him, but also just some good looks weren't falling. And then he gets hurt, so then that's kind of game over. Like, shout out Dante and Burks for both going superhuman. It was hilarious how good their shot making was. Like, the Knicks hung with them offensively in the second half, even though like their shot quality wasn't as high. I mean, these dudes are just raining contested jumpers. Dante is curling around a screen with an inch of separation, and he is raining three after three. Alec Burks is just putting in those like laser beam threes that are rattling in, but they just couldn't compete, and they were ultimately in too deep of a hole. And again, I mentioned the crucial stretch where they did have those turnovers. So the story, ultimately, unfortunately for the Knicks, is just having some of the worst injury luck that we've seen in a long, long time. Like, it's an insane combination of injuries because you have teams who lose their best player. The Bucks lose Giannis this year. Somebody mentioned when I talked about the Knicks having the worst luck in forever, the Grizzlies this year, who obviously lost a number of key dudes. They lost Steven Adams before the year. They lost basically everybody for stretches. That's how we got to see the emergence of Vince Williams. I think about the 2019 Warriors losing KD, but then they only lose Clay for half of game 6. Like, yeah, that sucks, but we're talking about losing OG for a majority of this series. Obviously, you don't have Julius Randle at all in these playoffs. You don't have Mitchell Robinson at all in this series, and you even lose Brunson at the end. That is absolutely devastating, but it's still a hell of an accomplishment and a testament to this team that they were this close.
And Bojan Bogdanovic was out too, man. Like,
Bojan, of course.
I don't mean to, put him on the level with those guys, but like at this point, Tibbs just needed some bodies, man. He just needed
literally
guys who could go on the floor. Like, it is a testament, man. And I don't think this is disappointing. I think the most encouraging thing has to be what you got out of Jalen Brunson, man. Carson, these playoffs, he gives you 32 points, 3 rebounds, and 8 assists on 54% true shooting. The only other player to give you a stat line of 32, 3, and 8 in NBA playoff history across 2 or more series, 2018 LeBron James. Actually, just 32 points and 8 assists a night. Just him in 2018 LeBron. Like, historic stuff. Now, Brunson's always got the ball in his hands, kind of similar to LeBron, but like, it's just the burden was too much, man. And that's the guy I feel bad for, dude. He fractures his hand at the end of this one. Like, at the level with DiVincenzo and Burks were playing at, man, if he's out there, like, I still think they maybe make this one competitive, man. It just is too much to overcome. But the Knicks drastically overachieved. And I think there's a silver lining to this, Carson. You tell me what you think. I think it's good that Julius Randle didn't play in this playoff run, man. I think they low-key, I think they might have preserved his value a little bit. Not that he has great trade value anyway, but the fact that we didn't get another stinker from Julius Randle in the playoffs when we know how volatile he is, like, the Knicks have a great foundation moving forward, man, if they can hold on to all these guys. Like OG, if they can bring him back in, man, and run this thing back. And if they could somehow move Julius Randle off for another big piece, I think the Knicks really have something. I believe in this team's core. I believe in their defensive identity. I believe in Jalen Brunson as a number 1 guy in the playoffs. You go get him maybe another, I don't know, maybe just play Deuce McBride more. Like, I think there's got to be less offensive pressure on his shoulders. I think they can make some real noise moving forward, man. But the first guy I'm moving off of is I'm seeing what I can get back for Julius Randle, man. But I think it's good that he didn't play in these playoffs, man. I wonder if he had a stinker, if his value tanks even more.
It's complicated because I also don't think he could possibly have been worse than he was in his previous 2 playoff appearances, because those are like all-time disasters. It'll be interesting to see how they approach this offseason, because I think that they have something very real here. I know that there are some skeptics, some who think it's like, oh man, you're just pulling all these games out of your asses. It's like, yeah, okay. Well, when you don't have Julius Randle and OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson, like, yeah, you're going to have to win some games on the power of friendship and effort. But you still beat the Sixers without Randle. You came this close to the Eastern Conference Finals, even without OG for 5 games. And with him, I do think that they would have gotten there. So you have a lot of the ingredients that you look for, man. Fringe top 10 guy, shooters and extremely versatile role players. You rebound the hell out of the ball. Best rebounding team in the league. You're a great defensive team when healthy. Like, they were absolutely dominant down the stretch of the regular season with OG. And they have great control over this roster. Like, Dante and Hart are locked up through 2027. Brunson is still on like the all-time highway robbery deal for another year. Deuce McBride is on a cheap deal through 2027. So a lot of those pieces are going to remain in place. They just have to pay OG, and I'm paying OG whatever the hell he wants because he's the second most important player on this team. Julius Randle is essential, or somebody in that same mold, just to have a legit second high-level shot creator. But OG being one of the handful best defensive players on the planet, bringing the size and athleticism and defensive versatility, all the different matchups he took on in these playoffs, still being a really good offensive player. Like, that dude is everything for you alongside Brunson. You let Bojan walk, and then I would try my damnedest to re-sign Hartenstein because I think he is such an awesome, connective big who does so many high-level things on both sides of the ball. But it may be that he just demands too high an asking price. And if that is the case, well, you still have Mitchell Robinson. I would really love to keep Hartenstein, but if they can't, it's not the end of the world. They're in a really good spot, and I think they are close. I think this year they were the second best team in the East healthy. And again, they still damn near got to the final two, even without so many key pieces. So I would like to move Randle because I am ultimately a Randle skeptic. I think he is so reliant on tough jumpers that ultimately are just very inconsistent for him. And he can take your offense out of rhythm, and he can make bad decisions. And when he's seeing a second defender consistently in these playoff environments, he has struggled. So I don't love him for all those reasons. But I would only trade him for another star because I think that you need somebody who brings that offensive pop. Brunson and the gang, like, it's just not enough. Like, he was so sensational in this playoff run, but there was never a true contending ceiling there. And even if you add like another quality wing, I don't know, man. I think you just need more. So let me pitch this to you. I don't know if that they're going to trade Randle for what it's worth. Yeah, I can't read lips. You're muted. BI, is that what you're saying?
Oh, Macau? Can we get a little Macau love?
Yeah, Macau would be interesting. I guess you would just attach some draft capital to that because the Nets have no reason to want to take on Julius Randle. But the Knicks have 4 firsts over the next 2 years. So maybe you throw 1 or 2 of those in there. I don't love Macau as a consistent offensive number 2, but he is a good offensive player. Like, he can give you 20 a night. It's just, I think some of his one-on-one shot creation is a bit limited, right? The lack of real explosive athleticism, but he's a really good pure jump shooter, awesome defensively. And so you're just going to get better on that side of the ball. I was thinking maybe swinging a little bit even more for the fences. Now, Macau is great because of the timeline. What would you think about a sign and trade for Paul George? I have no idea what the likelihood that Paul George leaves the Clippers this offseason is, but I do think you would be able to sell him on having a better title chance in New York. And for LA, the upside is just, instead of letting him walk, you get some value back. The Knicks won't be able to sign him outright, but there will be a team out there that can. So I don't know how plausible it is, but I think PG would be a fantastic fit in New York. I think that he would be a more reliable offensive number 2 than Julius Randle. He's not the best in the world, but like, he is just such a great shot maker. And again, I don't think you need a perfect offensive number 2 because you're going to win on the back of effort and rebounding and defense, and Brunson eating up this volume. He's a great off-ball superstar, or an off-ball star, I should say. So he fits there. You maintain the defensive stuff. He's 34, but I just think he's a much better basketball player than Julius Randle.
I like that. I think it depends on how much value I'm giving up, I guess. Like, the other reason I like Macau too is I just think the team chemistry would be insane having
for sure
Hart, Brunson, DiVincenzo, and Macau
hugging and dancing and singing on the court. It'd be amazing. It'd be magical.
Would be awesome. How much, hypothetically, you're giving up what? Randle, and how many firsts do you think to get that done? I
don't know. Probably just like 1, I think.
If I'm
I don't know that the Clippers would be dying to bring on Julius Randle, but again, if PG is like, all right, I'm either going to walk or you're going to do this sign and trade, Julius Randle, you're still getting a 3rd star there.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely getting a player back for sure.
Yeah, you're getting a basketball player for sure.
I worry about the fall off coming with PG. I didn't love what we saw in the playoffs this year, but I like I like the role he would be in, not as like the lead dog. I like him in the number 2 role. And then I like the fact that you're not giving up too much value. To me, it teeters on, but the plus is that you're just getting rid of Julius Randle. If I give up a first or 2 firsts, I think I'd do it. I don't think that's enough like future value where I'm like, man, I can't give it up. And just the fact that I get Randle off the books is a plus. So I think I would do that. But the beauty is that if anybody out there, if there are any fish willing to bite on a Julius Randle bait,
Yeah.
I'm interested. I am very intrigued because that's a beauty. The Knicks aren't in cap hell. They've got a great roster on great contracts. And if they can just find that one more piece, they can do it. And so I think I would do that, man. My dream scenario still is Mikal, man. I just want all the love and the hugging and dancing and all the Noble
It'd just
boys.
be so beautiful.
It'd be great.
And I will say, the less pressure you put on him offensively, the better he gets. He's certainly not built to be a number 1, but when you unlock like more of the off-ball stuff, like in Phoenix, he was such a great cutter. He's such a good catch and shooter. And then you just need him to do some creating for himself. Yeah, that'd be a great fit. Even if they don't trade Randle, though, they're the second best team in the East to me because they still check so many boxes and physically they match up so well. And Randle is ultimately a guy who unlocks more upside than this Knicks team ever had without him, or than they would have even with like just a quality regular wing there. Because although you get the downsides with Randle, you also get that necessary shot creation and shot making when he's on, that if you want to contend, you just have to have that. So regardless of what they do, I think they're in a really good spot. And even though this run was to some extent just on the back of Magic and Disney movie stuff, like, they're down dudes. And when they have all their dudes, they're really, really good. And I think they have the best chance to knock off Boston of anybody. Any final thoughts, Logan, on all of this before we get out of here?
Naz Reid,
Logan. It has perhaps never been more appropriate to end an episode on those words than it is today. Shout out to the Timberwolves, bro. Shout out to all the Timberwolves fans. Shout out to the good people of Minnesota. What a moment for the franchise. What a moment. 20 years since you were there with Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell and the boys, Wally Zerbiak and the gang, Trenton Hassel and the boys, Troy Hudson and the fellas, and you're back. Like, what an accomplishment. What a moment. So enjoy it. We are going to be talking about what is next for the Timberwolves and what is next for the Pacers. Tomorrow, we will do our conference finals previews. So if you want to stay tuned in for those, subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of our content is here. All of our full episodes, breakout clips, and also some of the in-depth video essays, in-depth film breakdowns that we do. You can listen to the show across audio platforms. And if you want more of our content, you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can check out our merch if you want at thevolume.com. And you can join our Discord for a chance to speak to the one and only Matthew Spawnhour, who is in there and is very active. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.